Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the show. Today, I'm so excited to have our guest on, Hersh Rai. Hersh, welcome to the show.
Sujata, thanks so much for having me on. I'm really excited to be here and having a chance to talk with your audience today.
Awesome. Well, everybody, Hersh is a managing member of Rai Vu and an active real estate investor focusing on apartments and manufactured housing communities. He primarily leads acquisitions and overseeing investor relations. With any investment, he hopes to improve the quality of life for the tenants, provide favorable returns for his investors, and continue to work alongside experienced partners. He began real estate investing with his partner, Nicholas Vu, while attending graduate school in the Midwest. So, everyone, we're going to hear more from Hersh. Hersh, why don't you take us back in time and give us a sense of, I know you're in the military, kind of your origin story, how you started out, your career, and what drew you into real estate?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in New Hampshire. Parents immigrated here back in 97 from India, and I was actually born there. And growing up, parents always talked about, land of opportunity and being able to never take anything for granted. So that really stuck with me as I grew up. And as I became more mature, I realized I wanted to do something different with my life. I wanted to give back. So I decided to serve a higher purpose and join the military. I went to the United States Naval Academy and finished up about 2 years ago and graduated and commissioned as an officer. And from there, I had the opportunity to attend graduate school. So there, while I was pursuing my master's, I really wanted to leverage the time that I had as a more or less a civilian for the time being in graduate school and utilize that time to the best of my ability. So, there was no more military obligations while I was at Purdue. So I was really able to take advantage of all the free time. And in that free time, I decided to focus on personal finances. I had an affinity towards it and I wanted to explore traditional investments beyond, stocks, bonds, and your retirement account. So I looked into alternative asset investing, focusing on real estate, promissory notes, tax lien investing, but real estate was really what stuck out to me. So
Real quick, Hersh, will you just expand on why it is that you wanted to look outside of stocks, bonds, and mutual funds?
yeah, absolutely. So while I was at the academy, I did a lot of different trading. I had a Fidelity brokerage account. I would sometimes sit in class and trade, or I would be able to, conduct that with peers. But, being in an active duty role, you're not going to have that time, working from, 5:30 in the morning until whatever hours your commanding officer lets you go. So I didn't really want to keep my things long term in a low bearing interest account or just in a mutual fund where you don't really dictate what your returns are. The market is what dictates it for you. So I wanted something a little bit more tangible, something that I could control. And that's really how I got into the real estate space. And from there, I started listening to different podcasts, such as this one, where you're able to learn from experienced operators and innovators within the space, and realized I was in the Midwest. So that's one of the best opportunities to take advantage of, especially in the current market cycle where people are looking for cash flowing, stabilized real estate. And that's really how I got my start. Originally, I wanted to start with my partner doing student rentals at Purdue, realized that space is well dominated, having 45,000 people. There's only so much land that 45,000 people actually want to live in. Nobody's going to commute 5 to 10 miles away from campus, even 5 to 10 minutes away, if they want to have that student experience, especially at a Big Ten university. So decided to take my talents down to Indianapolis with Nick, and we really started to hit it hard and to connect with other people in multifamily and learn about that space.
Awesome. Okay, so you recently graduated then 2 years ago from the Naval Academy, is that right?
Yes, 2 years ago from the Naval Academy, and then I just finished up my master's about 6 months ago.
Okay, so that's pretty recent. Tell us what you have been working on in real estate and why you've chosen those particular avenues.
Yeah, absolutely. So recently I've closed on 3 deals, two mobile home parks and one multifamily asset. Those are my first 3 deals that I've done, all closed within Q1 and Q2 of 2021.
Well,
So in
major
Q,
congratulations on hitting it out of the park right off the bat.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And so I would say 2020 itself was a big learning year for me. It was, my first whole year at Purdue. It was a year of getting to learn different aspects of the business, how you can contribute if you don't really have experience, knowledge that you haven't built yet, or capital. So I found that my strengths lied in getting the acquisition of the deal, finding the deal, sourcing the deal, underwriting the deal, and potentially raising capital for the deal as I built out my network of investors along with my partner.
Okay.
But in
And
order to,
just to dive deeper into that, because there's a lot there. You figured out your unique value proposition to a GP team. How did you figure out that you were good at acquisitions?
it really came down to what I wanted to focus on. And it came back down to those four pieces that I talked about, the knowledge, the experience, the deal flow, and the capital. Being a college graduate student, I didn't have much capital being able to attain, especially just coming out of a role as an undergraduate student. And I definitely was not experienced in any way. And I was building up my knowledge, but I needed to do something about it. I needed to take action. And with that, I started to connect with a lot more people on LinkedIn, Facebook, and social media groups focused on real estate, going to different meetups in Indianapolis and other large cities in Ohio, Kentucky. And from there, I was really able to expand my knowledge base and really start to actively learn and listen to operators in the space. And I learned about the idea of joint venture, of syndication, and how these models are very proven over time, whether you're doing it for a venture capital or a real estate equity fund or a syndication, the model is the same. And the business is essentially raising other people's money to afford an investment opportunity to present to other people who are in the business with you. And that really seemed like an interesting opportunity to me. It seemed like something I could do while I was active duty, but I didn't want to overstep my boundaries by focusing on the operation side again, because I didn't have that experience and I didn't have that market know-how. So by presenting an opportunity for acquisitions, I was able to really leverage that standpoint and best perform where I know I can add value to a team.
Mhm. So were you able to, were you building relationships with brokers? What all was entailed in that?
Yeah. So initially we had started with brokers, right? Just like everyone else, everyone's always like, yeah, brokers want to talk to you. But we quickly came to find out that brokers don't want to talk to you unless you have a track record, right? They're going to send you things that have been across 100 people's desks before it even reaches you. And once it reaches you, if it's not going to make sense for 100 other people, it may make sense to you. But my thought is you're either doing something wrong by overpaying, not underwriting correctly, or it's just not something that's going to be worth your time. So that was really a moment that struck my partner and I, and we decided that we wanted to just focus on off-market deal sourcing. So we had started to do some non-traditional methods of finding deals. And what I mean by that is, we had not just gone on list source or, paid for a co-star or Reonomy membership. We had essentially, done non-traditional campaigns, and we actually were driving our markets, 6 to 8 hours on the weekends, going around, writing down property names, going back, skip tracing the owner, and then calling these owners. So we were doing this all ourselves. And then we realized that we're not going to have this time later. So now we have a system in place to utilize virtual assistants to do all that for us, right? So they'll go on Google Maps to look at our criteria. They'll find the addresses, find the skip tracers, and then they'll call for us. And that's how we get all of our leads. So the past 3 deals have either been off market, or one of them was brought by a semi broker. He's more of a buddy of mine. And he said, hey, this is a bigger deal. I know you want to do your first deal. Here's a good one. And we ended up doing that. But everything else has been off market.
That's pretty impressive, I would say, that you've managed to outsource acquisitions or much of it to virtual assistants. Because I mean, you were driving for dollars, like you're actually driving. So how do they use Google Maps to look for properties effectively?
So essentially, I don't know their whole intrinsic process, but what I can tell you is what we do is we give them our criteria, and we basically say it's not very specific, by the way. We basically say, hey, can you go look for apartment buildings within this 50-mile radius? So for example, if you just say from Indianapolis downtown, I want a 50-mile radius of all the apartment complexes within this area. I'm sure they look at tax assessor data. I'm sure they probably have access to different streams or data scraping methods that they utilize to find those addresses and those properties. And then once we have those properties, we can do a little bit more research with our skip tracing team to identify what the property is, how big it is, what type of property is it? Is it a mobile home park? Is it an apartment complex, or is it an assisted living community? And what we want to target out of those. And then that's when we'll finally send it off to our cold caller to put out those calls and formulate leads for us, where Nick and I will take over the relationship from there and build out the connection.
Okay, awesome. Very impressive. So you were able to build out this system, and now where do you pick it up from the VAs?
Yeah. So once we get a warm lead, and what I mean by a warm lead is someone who actually picked up the phone or who called back the number and said, hey, I'd like to talk to you. whoever it might be, whether it's Nick, me, or the VA. And the VA will essentially say, this is what they're looking to do in the market. This is how they've established themselves, and they just want to learn. And we don't really go up front to cold callers and say, hey, are you looking to sell your property?
Mhm.
Because that's very
Off-putting.
off-putting. Yes, that's the word for it. And we want to develop a more personalized relationship with anyone that's in our market, because again, right, they might be someone who owns up to $2 billion in assets that you don't know. You don't know who's behind the phone unless you do some research into their background, right? So you always want to be courteous, kind, and develop a relationship and let them talk about themselves, their business, and what they're looking to do. So once they do that, we build some relationship, then we start talking about, it could be 6 months down the line when they're ready to sell. It could be a year from now. But as long as you maintain that relationship, see how they're doing, following up is the most crucial point. Following up and being, extremely diligent with that, that'll lead to results. And we've seen those results come already within the past year or so, which has been great.
Yeah, that's really awesome to see that working. So what does your system look like for follow? So first of all, your VA reaches out, and are they calling?
Yes, they are calling for us.
Okay. And they, what do they say?
So essentially the script, I don't know it exactly, but the script will basically go, hey, my name is Hersh. I'm calling with Rivu. They are a real estate private equity firm based out of Delaware. That's where our LLC is. And they're looking to essentially learn more about the market. They came across your name as an active operator and investor within Indianapolis. We realize that you have an asset or multiple assets, and all they want to do is learn about how your assets have performed during COVID, how you've survived the past economic cycle, and what you're planning to do with your properties in the future. And what that really gets owners thinking about is, wow, like people have sought me out to, kind of learn what I've been doing. It makes them feel important, which they are, because they've gotten this asset, whether it's through inheritance, hard work, or their W-2, and they just wanted to afford something on the side. I mean, they've come to that point in their life somehow. So you just want to learn more about why they are there where they are and what they're planning to do with the future. And this just opens up a conversation and really allows you to connect with that individual.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that. Sometimes that's just so helpful to think about, how do you actually effectively reach out to someone? So then they answer the phone, they express some interest, and then are you calling them back at that point?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
So after that, once our VA is done calling and they've built that relationship, there's usually a callback number, which is either going to be my personal cell phone or Nick's personal cell phone, whichever one the VA gives at the time. And then, we'll do our best to answer. We'll text them, we'll email them, and we'll coordinate a time to speak more in depth. Whether it's 15 minutes, 30 minutes, however much time they want to give us, we'll give them. And that's how we start building the relationship. And they learn a lot more about us as individuals, what we do, both in the military, in the real estate space, as well as, in our personal lives as well. And it forms a great connection for the owner as well as the prospective buyer, which is us, looking to make these acquisitions and, solve both the investor's problem, the owner's problem, as well as our problem.
For sure. So you're basically coming at it from a place of relationship building rather than like, do you want to sell your property? And
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Are you looking in specific markets?
Yeah, we are. So our past three acquisitions, two of them have been in Pensacola, Florida. So that's where Navy Flight School is. Nick is down there right now. So we really have an affinity towards the Gulf Coast. So anywhere essentially from Gulfport, Mississippi out to Tallahassee, Florida, right off the I-10 corridor. We really like that area. Anything north of Pensacola, we might consider, but it would need to be a really attractive opportunity to consider. And then we like Indianapolis just because we have been in that market for a year and a half. We know it. We drove the streets, spending multiple weekends in the city, learning from different operators, learning from different owners, lenders, brokers, property managers, and building great relationships in that market. So those are the two that we really focus on. And, we are open to other markets. It's just right now we want to focus on those two avenues and doing the best we can to provide for our tenants as well as our investors.
Awesome. So here's a question about your process. So you're working full-time for the Navy, living in Indianapolis. How do you convince yourself or discipline yourself to work and drive these neighborhoods for 6 to 7 hours on the weekends and just maintain that building a business while working full-time? And
Yeah,
what else is
absolutely.
required?
Yeah, so that was when I was in graduate school. So I've recently moved to Hawaii, right? But I think what the diligence was is, how much do you want it, right? What is your why? It comes down to that, right? Why do you do what you do? Is it for financial gain? Is it for long-term financial wealth and independence? Is it to potentially give back to those causes that you're extremely passionate about? And for me, it's really about giving back beyond my military service. It's about, trying to give back to different foundations, such as the Wounded Warrior Foundation, the Sean Brock Foundation, mission sets that really resonate with me and, those who have gone before me and allow us to have the life we live in the United States. And that's really what drives my passion, right? I mean, like people tell you, money comes and goes, but legacy and being able to provide for others lasts forever. And that's something that really hits me. So that's what drives me to be able to do this every time and, being able to provide something else for other people who might not have that opportunity.
Awesome. And so that's really helpful. And when you were in graduate school doing, at least at the time, what were you doing outside of your graduate school hours? And was that taxing on you?
I wouldn't say taxing just because I enjoyed it, but what I was doing was I was hopping on different meetups every night. I was going and attending owner operator calls and just shadowing different operators and learning what they're doing. I was connecting rampantly with people on LinkedIn. I only had class Tuesday and Thursday, and other times I was in the lab doing research. But in my off periods, if I had a 3-hour window, I would be like, all right, I'm going to drive down to Indy, get lunch with another guy who's another owner or broker and learn what they're doing in the business and then drive back for school. So, doing those types of things and, taking the time to meet other people really was important to me while I was in the market.
Okay. There was a lot there. I just want to kind of piece some of that apart. So when you said you were just shadowing owner operators and seeing what they were doing, how did you even get those meetings and relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of it came from alma mater and military connections, to be completely honest with you. I mean, prior to the podcast, I know we were discussing that there are a lot of people, military people in the space. Real estate itself is a small community and there are, a good number of military folk in it. So it was just really about me reaching out, learning about what their background is, how they're doing it. These are active duty Air Force, Army, Coast Guard, Navy, Marines who are having successful W-2 careers while being able to invest in real estate, either passively or actively. And I really wanted to focus on the active side at the time just because I didn't have capital to invest. And these guys were more than happy to have me sit in, as a listener and, be able to offer feedback when I was called upon and just kind of listen and absorb. And I think that really helped being able to learn how people look at different assets and what their thoughts are in a business world.
Awesome. Well, it's important to leverage the network that you have, and clearly the military one is a strong one for you, which is awesome. So now let's talk about, you mentioned LinkedIn and connecting rampantly on LinkedIn. So what did that actually look like? Who did you decide to reach out to, and how did you approach them on LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. So with LinkedIn, I primarily, or at least my partner and I both primarily started with people from our alma mater, right? And our alma mater was the United States Naval Academy. And there's an extensive network of people who work in the commercial real estate lending platform of the business. And from there, we were just able to connect with so many different individuals and get so many different referrals. I mean, what I did was I would basically send them a message and say, hey, I'd love to connect with you, learn more about what you're doing in the real estate space. This is what I'm doing. This is where I'm from. And, that connection being from the Naval Academy usually incites people to take at least 15 minutes out of their day to talk to another graduate. And from there, it was just a lot of referrals being able to say, okay, I'm talking to person A. Do you have person B that you can recommend me to speak with in the future? And it just from there, it cycled. And I got so many different connections, made so many, relationships, and got so much opportunity out of it that I never thought I would do just from talking, for 15 to 30 minutes with these individuals. And that's really how I started. And then from there, it just grew.
So. Yeah, that's super, super awesome. So were you specifically reaching out to people from your alma mater that were in real estate?
Yes, correct. That's how I primarily got started, at least with connecting on LinkedIn. But as I started to meet new people through referrals who are not necessarily from my alma mater, but from other universities, institutions, or even different backgrounds, I was able to diversify who I'm connected with on LinkedIn and really grow that base.
Okay. Yeah. And that's awesome. And so did meeting with all these people, is that how you kind of developed your strategy for acquisitions?
Yes and no. I think a lot of it was figuring out where pain points are for other operators and being able to add value and consistently speaking with other operators. It's like, we have the capital lined up. We work with the real estate private equity groups. We have the balance sheet, but it's really difficult to come across potential value add or core plus assets right now. So I said, okay, here's a problem we can solve. Nick, let's dive into this a little bit more, my partner. And we did. We decided to say, hey, this is the problem that we can solve. And that really what guided us. But our process came from what we like about the business and what we think is stronger than, potentially other avenues that people might take.
For sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I love that, finding a problem to solve. I mean, that's classic entrepreneurship sort of starting point. And I'm curious, when you're talking to these owners, so I want to kind of circle back now to the outreach that you've been doing with owners.
Sure.
So you're building this relationship, and how does that go? After you've established them as a warm lead, you connect with them, and how do you build that relationship?
So, I've alluded to it before, but it's really about getting to learn about the other person. In any personality or relationship book you read, it always mentions get the other person to talk about themselves, right? People love talking about who they are, what they're doing, where they're from, as long as they have some degree of extroversion. And if they don't, if they're an introvert, you have to learn why they're introverted. And that's perfectly okay. I have plenty of people that I know in the business who are introverts, but they're able to leverage that by being attentive listeners rather than speakers. And, everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, but it's really just about learning who that individual is, what they're looking to do, and what they want to do in the future. Do they have aspirations of traveling the world? Well, maybe they don't want to be managing a 36 unit property in the middle of Cincinnati. Or do they want to focus on the performing arts, or do they have passions to go open a rock band? I don't know, right? You just want to learn what these people want to do. And if they say, I plan on holding this for the rest of my lifetime, well, great. That's absolutely phenomenal. As long as they're taking care of their people and making sure that they have a well-established relationship with their tenants and anyone else in the business, that's awesome. And I don't have anything to say against those guys. I know a lot of people are completely turned off when someone doesn't want to sell, but you never know where that relationship might take you in the future. I mean, I've had owners who have said, I don't want to sell to you. I don't want to sell, but my buddy down the street is looking to sell, and it's a bigger complex, and he's actually giving it for a pretty decent cap rate. So those are the types of things that, you always want to build that relationship and continue to manage it with. And like I said, follow up. We usually have a rule: 2 weeks, 2 weeks, a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, right? That's like usually how we follow up as we go. So
What was that? 2 weeks and then 3 weeks and then
two,
go ahead.
2 weeks, 1 month, 2 weeks, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and then a year.
Okay. Great. Yeah, I love it. That's super awesome.
Usually how we like to follow up.
Yeah, so that's super awesome. Well, thank you so much. I know we could keep talking for a while, but maybe we'll do a deep dive into one of your acquisitions next time we talk, if that's okay, Hersh. But for right now, I'd love to just shine the spotlight on you and give you a chance to let the listeners know how to contact you and anything else you'd like to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thanks so much for having me on, Sujata. It's been a pleasure, and I love sharing my story with everyone. To contact me, you can find me on LinkedIn. It's HERSH space RAI. I'm the only one who comes up with that name. So feel free to connect with me on there. You can also connect with me at my email, hersh@rivucapital.com. Looking forward to connecting and growing with you guys. And again, Sujata, thanks so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure, and I really look forward to hearing this.
Thanks so much, Hersh. You definitely knocked it out of the park and provided a ton of value for us, and can't wait to see you some other time in the future. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, absolutely.